we have players already. We can go to the table. John McCarroll and Joseph Marden. We have Naya and Jund Sagavan. So let's get going. Both players 5-1. We'll get to the deck list between games.
And before this confuses you too much, Joe, they both have Gigantha as their companion, but one of them does look like a weird goop elk.
I'm sorry, a weird what?
Goop elk.
Okay.
And that's an Inquisition of Kozilek.
Good looking out. All right, so that
I got
that
you.
takes a Remand out of the Naya Zoo deck. Do we have these labeled correctly? Let's see. The Naya Zoo deck is in fact okay. Okay, this is a tribal Zoo deck. Would be maybe more accurate. Naya Zoo is fine, but there is one Remand. There are 4 Storm Denial. So there are counters backing up the heavy hitters in the deck: Scion of Draco, Nishoba Brawler, things like that.
Oh, see, I don't even need to tell you what these cards are. You know them.
Yeah, I do okay. All right, and for Joseph Marden's Jund Sagavan deck, we have this is kind of something we saw a lot of maybe a year and a half ago. The Wrenn and Six powered Tarmogoyf decks that are using Urza Saga and able to recur them with Wrenn and Six.
Are they actually playing the card is so dead to me, I like half the time can't even remember its name. Are we actually still playing Tarmogoyf in this deck?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's a full 4.
Okay, because some of the like Zoomers with the Jund Sagavan deck were not playing Tarmogoyf, and I was like, oh, thank goodness, we're finally deciding that card isn't worth playing.
All right, so on the board here we have Joseph Marden having drawn the Saga Target Nile Spellbomb, which is not really applicable in the matchup.
Yeah, that's a little bit rough, but it should be able to draw some cards. However, we are already facing down some pretty difficult to handle cards, and Territorial Kavu being able to add quite a bit of power to the Scion of Draco that's already tapped and been doing some attacking.
Yes, indeed. All right, so let's pop up Scion of Draco for people that may be unfamiliar with it. And if you...
What do you what?
So MTG Melee has a very cool card lookup feature. So I just looked up Scion of Draco.
I think I just did the same thing.
And it's not in English.
Yeah, the Scion of Draco on MTG Melee is in Korean.
So anyway, the card is discounted 2 mana for each basic land type you have in play, which is why it's played in a deck like this, and why it's kind of a domain zoo deck, not just a Naya deck. And it's a 4/4 flyer that boosts your other creatures based on what color the creatures are. So, for example, the Kavu that's in play, being red-green, benefits with having First Strike and Trample. And that will be playing for John McCarroll to pick up game 1. All right.
That was a quick game, but hey, we're going to get to see what is making this deck brought by John McCarroll kind of tick. I mean, we were already talking about it a little bit. You're trying to play a lot of these creatures that are basically trying to turn themselves sideways and are made a lot more powerful by what lands you have in play.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is these are undercosted creatures that hit hard, and that's not really what Magic is about anymore. But when you cobble enough of them together with some counters to back them up, and this deck can finish things off very quickly, as we saw there.
Let's take a look at John's opponent and see what is going to be brought to fight against this zoo deck in the form of Jund Sagavan. I like this deck. I like a deck that has some like fun naming convention to it. And I think it's an interesting difference from kind of the Jund decks of old. It does still end up feeling like it's in a weird space, but it is just like updating an old deck with some new toys that have been printed. And taking a peek at the sideboard here, what do you think this Jund deck is going to want to add to its repertoire?
Well, it's going to need efficient removal. I mean, it's got a couple. You can see in the main deck, there's 2 of multiple different removal spells. Lightning Bolt and the Holy Heat are going to come up a little shy on some of these creatures. Engineered Explosives is great, but you're not hitting Scion of Draco with that ever. I still think we'll see it. Yeah, there's I don't know. I would say this is gonna be tough for the Jund Sagavan deck. It needs some time to get established, and its creatures are smaller. It's playing Tarmogoyf, and Tarmogoyf is kind of outclassed by some of the creatures in the Domain Zoo deck list. So I don't know. I'm not confident in Joseph Marden's chances here, but like you're saying, looking at the sideboard here, I mean, what do you even like? I mean, explosives is fine, although it kills your own stuff also.
I know. I was gonna say this sideboard feels like it just is not prepared for something like this zoo deck, and I think like we're seeing this at one of the top tables. So I think that a lot of decks are likely going to run into this exact same problem, not prepared for a bunch of 2-mana 5/4s or like creatures that are really too difficult to kill on a lot of different turns in this game. And so I think, like, honestly, John McCarroll just made a nice metagame choice and is kind of just running people over.
Yeah, we'll see if that continues. Let's go back down to the table for game number 2, where yeah, Joseph's gonna need above average draws, I think, to keep up here. John McCarroll's creatures are just too big. Well, and that opening hand was about a dozen cards, so that's going to be a mulligan. John wasn't satisfied with the first 7. Looked at the next 5. I was like, yeah, this wasn't going to work anyway.
Do you look at the rest of the cards?
Not a chance.
Nope. Okay, yeah, I don't either. I think we've had this discussion a few times, but it's one of those things that I feel like never gets old. I am a believer that if I look at what I would have drawn and it's good, it changes my opinion later. I never look.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Now, I don't know if I'm just fooling myself that I'm actually able to take this information into account and acknowledge it correctly, and so just ignore that and just go with whatever you feel. All right, John McCarroll found 6 that are going to work, and all right, Ragavan into play. John McCarroll. Most of the heavy hitting creatures do cost 2, but there are some 1-mana creatures, and there is a removal spell, so that Ragavan will be dodged for the moment.
Lightning bolt. I mean, is this going to be the new Bolt the Bird, Bolt the Monkey? It definitely doesn't have the same ring to it, but
if I would rather have my opponent activate Birds of Paradise to cast a 3-drop than hit me with Ragavan, get a treasure, and then play the 3-drop anyway off of my own deck.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. So I don't know. Bring back Birds of Paradise, please.
Yeah, really. They're underplayed in the metagame.
It's so true.
Okay, here's time
people are
for
saying
Joseph.
It should be push or heat the monkey, but I don't know. I feel like all the decks that are playing in Holy Heat are also playing Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, I don't know. What Joseph really needs is a bunch of Doomblades to handle all these creatures. There's an MTG Remy video about Doomblades and having too many Doomblades. Joseph Marden would do well to impersonate that right now. As here's a Territorial Kavu for John McCarroll.
This is a place where I'm also like, I don't know, do we have like Dreadbore, Terminate, something that just is a blanket destroy some things? Because, yeah, this Territorial Kavu gets to be quite large.
Yes, and with attack triggers, it can become a real nuisance. I mean, just getting to rummage, I mean, that's something nice. Meanwhile, and the Tarmogoyf can actually get shrunk by the Territorial Kavu attacking if it was able to. Instead, it gets dispatched here, and Tarmogoyf will come across for a healthy amount of damage.
Yeah, thankfully, Joseph, with Fatal Pushes in hand, those are pretty safe to use to dispose of these Territorial Kavus, and a nice 1-mana answer, exactly what you're looking to have in hand.
So I looked at that land drop for John McCarroll, and I thought to myself, well, there's no way that's a Tranquil Thicket, even though it looks like it. Let me look through the deck list. And it is a Tranquil Thicket.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So playing some of the cheap cycle lands to take advantage of Wrenn and Six, and also maybe boost up your draws later on in the game, later on in the match.
I do appreciate that we also have a nice old border Tranquil Thicket too. The drip happening from John McCarroll's deck, like we've got some nice alt arts, some nice foils. I'm kind of a fan of a lot of the choices that have been made.
Yeah. All right. Less so a fan for me, but we know that already. All right. Tyler's Tracker for Joseph here, unaffected land. We're definitely throwing it back here to the old days. Tireless Tracker, you can see there, whenever is landfall, make a clue. Whenever you sacrifice a clue, put a plus counter. So the tracker can grow over time. Whether Joseph has that time remains to be seen, as Territorial Kavu does come across here.
Yeah, with 3 mana open, do you even start to debate about, oh, okay, a rough place to be. Tarmogoyf decides to block the Territorial Kavu, and John McCarroll answers with Endurance.
Yeah, so this is, as opposed to a pump spell, this is kind of a debuff for your opponent's Tarmogoyf, which works just as well in combat there. And Tarmogoyf, yeah, falls down, and John McCarroll cruising along here. Lower life total, but looking good.
Yeah, making some decisions as far as what we're doing now that this Urza Saga final chapter made ourselves a construct before we are searching.
All right,
Shadow Spear.
Shadow Spear and Construct, not too bad with 2 clues on the board. So this construct's a 4/4 already. That's decent size. If there's a land to equip this here, then Joseph Marden might be in business.
All right, a little bit of extra oomph. And let's get attack you with the Tireless Tracker.
All right, so this is just going to be offering up a trade, I guess, with a drawn off clue from the tracker. Yeah, Joseph will convert one of those clues. I think.
Yeah, I think we were converting the clue to be able to trade with the Endurance.
Bit of a shortcut there, but both players understood what was going on. And so, yeah, a 5/5 construct. And Territorial Kavu attacks in again. This is how big of a Kavu? This is a 4/4, I believe. I guess it was a 5/5.
Yeah, I was also about to.
Okay, there we go. It was a 4/4. The block did happen. The Kavu died, and now Wrenn and Six comes down to finish off the construct. That makes more sense.
There we go. Getting it all done somehow as an Arid Mesa to follow it up and try to finish off the I guess you can't call it a trifecta. Get all the land types into play. Unfortunately, though, John doesn't have another Territorial Kavu to follow it up and didn't have another 2-mana creature. So still sitting back with just this Wrenn and Six in play.
All right, a Fable for Joseph Marden. That will create some board presence here. And really, he just needs time at this point. If he's able to convert those 3 clues into cards, he should be well positioned to take this to a game 3.
Indeed, at least in a better place than we saw in game number 1. We'll see what John is going to be able to draw. Has kind of missed a few land drops for the last 2 turns, I believe, and so makes me a little bit spooked about what could possibly be in hand as another Arid Mesa or another land comes down. And there we go. Yeah. Now that we've got some lands, we're able to deploy some of these cards that were stuck in our hand. Unfortunately, that Scion of Draco not long for this world, and it's quickly terminated.
Yeah, nice pull there for Joseph Marden. And then here is the Rummaging, and the Ragavan and Boseiju go to the graveyard. So a full grip of cards for Joseph here. Managed to deploy this Shadow Spear, which seemed like it might have potential to swing the board. It actually hasn't been equipped yet until now. It'll find itself on top of the Fable token.
It looks like we will throw the Nishoba Brawler in front of it with 3 toughness and 5 power, I imagine. Just going to be able to trade with that 3/3. And a Wrenn and Six of Joseph's own is going to get back into Urza's Saga and try to add a little bit of extra creature reliancy in the form of other card types.
Yeah, boy, with those 3 clues on the board, and the Shadow Spear and the treasure now.
Wow.
The
What a
Wrenn and
turn.
6 for Joseph is stronger than the Wrenn and 6 for John, being able to bring back Saga, like you're saying. Each Saga is worth 2 constructs, and then if the game is still going, be recycled into a fresh Saga again. And Joseph, pretty good smile on his face there, looking pleased with himself and this growing board position. Intricate game here, and John McCarroll now maybe somewhat on the back foot.
I would say so, unless we're going to be able to find something
Well,
to handle what's on the board. That's Tribal Flames, I believe, to
yeah.
just quickly say goodbye to the Wrenn and Six on the other side of the board, and Scion of Draco. Are both players hellbent? Except for that Joseph has, once again, 3 clues in play.
Yeah, I think you're right, though, except for that. But that means Joseph is way ahead because his board position is obviously superior. I mean, Zion does fly. But these constructs are going to punch pretty hard if they get Shadow Spear equipped. And I don't know, maybe we'll get to the point now where Gigantha even finds its way into hand.
Yeah, do you go for the Gigantha into hand first, or do you try to sacrifice some of these clues and see what you get off the top of the deck first?
You know, I think I'm okay with leaving the clues on the board because these constructs are boosted by them. And a construct with a Shadow Spear right now is the best thing going on either side. So I think I want to maintain that if I'm in Joseph's seat. And there is Gigantha to hand. Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, oh no, we do have 5 mana. We've got a treasure. We could just go ahead and deploy Gigantha, but considering that John is untapping, I guess that's not the game plan.
Becky Bell, you know, how many times have we watched matches as Joseph does win this one and even things up? How many times have we seen companions? What is the primary and almost only use of a companion in Magic? It's to pitch to an elemental, right? That's it.
There were no cards in hand.
So that means Gigantha is worthless. Casting Gigantha guarantees you're going to lose the game. That is what I can surmise after a couple of years of doing this.
All right. Well, now that John McCarroll has fallen in a game, we can kind of dive into this sideboard. Do you think that there's anything in particular? I know in days of old, Veil of Summer was kind of annoying for Jund players, or something that you at least wanted to have in your repertoire. Is that still true for this Jund Sagavan version?
I mean, I suppose it could be. I think in many, when you're basically dealing with an opponent whose spells are removal, Veil of Summer is in some ways just an upgrade to something like Stubborn Denial, right? It's the same mana cost. It's actually less taxing on the deck because there's more green sources than blue, and it cantrips as long as you're getting something like a Terminate. And so I could see that. We didn't see any of that game, I don't believe. In fact, something I was noticing during that last game was that I thought we had mentioned there was companions on both sides, but then there wasn't. And that's because John actually disabled his companion by bringing in the Endurance.
Oh.
So that's we saw that come into play with the Endurance that wiped out the Tarmogoyf, and a tip-off that's available there was that the Gigantha was no longer present. So that's interesting. I didn't really notice that at the time, but we can see it now in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know that there's anything else you really want there. And for Joseph, and we looked about this before, I mean, what you want for Joseph's in Joseph's seat is just removal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because you want time.
Yeah, this time around, we did just kind of see the removal spells that are already available to Joseph just be a little more apparent. There aren't really that many extra removal spells in the sideboard, unless you kind of count Culligan's Command, but I don't think 2 damage is killing any one of these 2 mana 5/5s.
Well, sure, but killing the artifact matters.
That's
because
true.
of the Zion. So maybe a Culligan's Command could come in. I mean, kill a Zion, recur a creature, that could matter in a longer game. And again, I feel like in a lot of ways we're talking about Joseph needs to play a longer game in order for, and I mean, that last game it worked. We saw Wrenn and Six recur Saga, and that was kind of what the power boost Joseph needed to have there to take that down. Now, John wants to just play his beaters and end the game, maybe with the Tribal Flames, maybe with a counter to back it up.
Yeah, Joseph, it looks like taking a mulligan is on the draw this time around, so not going to lead to an extreme amount of card disadvantage. And I don't know, we saw how much the few removal spells that Joseph saw in game number 2 ended up mattering in the form of the Terminate and the Fatal Push. So I think it makes sense that we would be prioritizing mulliganing to things like that a lot more in this match.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when you're playing Ragavans, Wrenn and Sixes, things like this, I mean, you can make up card disadvantage, even though we're playing aggressive slanted decks, especially from John's seat. Card advantage still matters and is still available.
Land start into Inquisition of Kozilek. John gonna make a fetch of his own. Do you think this is gonna be a Veil of Summer?
Oh, it'd be pretty strong as an untapped
pool. Oh, well,
greedy
Greedy
pool,
Pool
and
could do it.
I mean, it could be a Summer Denial also, but Veil of Summer is much more devastating for Joseph. It
Veil
is.
of Summer.
Yeah.
Bam.
So anyone that's been on the wrong end of this knows this pain. This is pretty harsh. A straight 2 for
I don't know.
1.
At least it's an IOK, not a Thoughtseize.
Okay, sure. Still, it's kind of a beating there. John will pick up the free card because like the way the deck wants to curve out. If it doesn't happen on turn 1, it's probably not getting cast on the next couple turns. He taps out for a creature on turn 2, gets killed. Okay, Veil of Summer is still stuck in hand, but here gets to make use of it right away, and compounding Joseph's mulligan with another free card, and then here's a Wrenn and Six. So John McCarroll arguably up 3 cards here already.
Yeah, and did not have to mulligan, as Urza's Saga going to be the play for Joseph to follow up with a Tarmogoyf. So far, no card advantage pieces for Joseph, and yeah, as you mentioned, a whole lot for John. And I mean, Wrenn and Six just seems like, I think it seems like such a good card in every single deck, but especially in a deck where you're trying to amass 5 colors, it just seems like an easy no-brainer.
Right, and here we have Territorial Kavu, which one of the options on attack trigger is to rummage, and so John can just convert these fetch lands he's recycling into fresh cards. Joseph Marden, we're going to need to see, not, we're talking about all the great things going for John. Joseph absolutely still in fine position here, but is going to need something going on here, and it looks like a pass.
Both players fetching at the same time here, which is interesting, as I believe we're going back to John's turn. I wonder if this is Joseph just saying, I would like to respond knowing that you're going to get a tapped land and don't have a way to protect something.
Right. It could be that. It could be just, I want to get ready to make a construct before you can Boseiju my Urza Saga in response or something like that. That's a pretty corner case scenario. And either way, the land is on the board. The attack is incoming after N6 picks it up. And yeah, land discarded. John draws something.
Yeah, we are making a construct, and the construct is being put in front of that Territorial Kavu. One of these lands that we've gotten back a few times from this Wrenn and Six, we're going to sacrifice that. Probably get it back some later turn, but continue to just fix our mana. A basic land. Ooh, it's one of the Godzilla ones, too.
So this Wrenn and Six already on 6, and here with John with 2 blockers. Joseph's got his work cut out for him. Now, let's see. How big is this Tarmogoyf? We have Inquisition, Land, Veil. So it's just a 3/4 right now. Kolaghan's command, actually, to take out 1 Scion and then ping down Wrenn and Six would then allow Tarmogoyf to attack the Wrenn and Six and either force the other Scion to chump block or get through. I mean, that would be a way for Joseph to come back in the game. In the meantime, he's got to deal with his Saga here, deciding what he wants to do. Didn't even look like he floated mana there, but it may have been just verbally recognized. Okay, Shadow Sphere is another way that this Tarmogoyf can, rumble in.
Ooh, yeah.
Would be offering himself up in trade, though, as these Zions are 4/4s. And it's not easy for Joseph to kill these. Fatal Push is not going to kill it.
No, Bolt, it technically costs 12 mana.
Yeah, Unholy Heat. I mean, it's, Terminate is good. That works.
Yeah, I think that is, like, I mean, I kind of just said it in joke, but that's a pretty big deal in a format where we're moving back towards things like prismatic ending. It makes it that much more difficult to handle these technically 12 mana things just sitting on the board that really cost John 2 mana.
Yeah. All
I think
right.
this is a Culligan's
It
command.
is Colgan's command. Okay. So yeah, knock out a Zion, punch the Wrenn and Six, and now this Tarmogoyf can attack.
That has to be a Culligan's command, though I admittedly don't think I've actually ever seen that art before.
I haven't either, but that is what it has to be. And if you're wondering maybe, well, why could Joseph have attacked first and tried to get a double block out of John? The mana floating from the colorless mana there was floating from the Urza Saga. And then no attack is forthcoming. So Joseph's going to try and preserve the life total, hang back to block.
Whoa, we must have just like control. Oh, Leyline Binding. Okay, I was like, what did we just control magic? What's happening? But it is a Leyline Binding, a big attack, and a Tribal Flames and Lightning Bolt to finish off the last bit of damage. So, in true paper fashion, things are happening at a verbal level that are not happening on a visual level. That's taken us a little while to catch up to.
Yeah, but that was I mean, not every match, and certainly not all the ones yesterday went the way we expected them to go. Not the one today with Blue Eye Control versus Rhinos, but here the Tribal Zoo deck does take out the John Sagavan deck, which is kind of what we expected.
Yeah, I certainly would have guessed that. I mean, a lot of the Jund decks were already trying to do the thing that this deck is doing. They're trying to play something like that Tarmogoyf and have it be this like monstrous thing for 2 mana. This Zoo deck is just doing a better job of it.
Yeah, no, it really is. All right, so we got a backup match for you. Let's go ahead and roll game one. George Jabbour is back versus Dominic Stryker. Azorius Control versus Mono Green Tron. Both players at 4-1-1. So going to need to win the last two and then hope the tiebreakers fall their way.
All right, Joe. You and I have played a bit of Mono Green Tron.
Yes, we have.
How does this matchup feel?
I feel like in general, I felt good from the Tron side. Cash triggers are pretty great. There's unlikely to be real good answers for that from Georgia's side. We'll get into the real details of it probably in the Sideboard games. But I had another question. So George Jabbour, at some point in the future, if you found out, would you be more surprised to find out that Narset is cosplaying as George Jabbour or that George Jabbour is cosplaying as Narset? Because I feel like they're almost one and the same.
The first one. I would be actually so excited. George, if you want help making yourself a Narset cosplay, hit me up. I will help you. I used to cosplay myself, and I think it would be awesome. Let's make it happen.
All right, so we're underway here. Both players, as you can see, are having companions. Giganta versus Kahira. Sylvan Scrying off of a Chromatic does get hit with what must be a Spell Pierce. And okay, that's already a good start for George. Interacting with the assembly of the mana for Dominic here. Now, is there a tower already in hand? Was it rolled up? It was. George Jabbour, that is not what he wants to see.
He's like, wait a minute, I didn't need to use the Spell Pierce? Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I mean, that's also a spot when you're in the Tron seat and you're like, haha, I got the Spell Pierce out.
Yeah, well, there are actually 3 Spell Pierces in George's deck.
Wow.
Here's a Cyclo Shark Typhoon in response to Karn Great Creator. And this can happen. I mean, if Tron gets to resolve its spells, it's bad news for the opponent a lot of the time. Karn Great Creator will give access to Sideboard here, and Dominic Stryker will search up, or not search up really, but well, okay, he's contemplating. So maybe his choice isn't completely obvious here on what he wants to do. if he's going to take any longer, I'll actually go. Okay, so he's thinking about this. Okay, the options are Haywire Might, Soulless Jailer, Walking Ballista, Injured Explosives, Pitting Needle, Liquid Metal Coating, which is often the winner at this point in the match, Stone Brain, Trinisphere, and Snaring Bridge, Seascape Leveler, Thunder Titan, Oblivion Stone, and the last card is Giganta. So this is a full Wish sideboard. There are no cards other than Artifacts and Giganta and Dominant Striker sideboard.
Yeah, I think normally we went with Cityscape Leveler here. I would have probably gravitated towards something like the Trinisphere or the Liquid Metal Coating, as you mentioned, just because the Liquid Metal Coating is going to shut off a lot of pieces and start to like give you some advantage generating movement in this match. But instead, just going with something that has a cast trigger, also not too bad of a decision in this Cityscape Leveler.
All right, and the leftover mana from the tower will find and use an expedition map, which will search up.
It was an Urza Saga.
Yeah, so that's why I thought it was an Urza Saga, and I looked at the deck list, and
I just did the same. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, the Urza Saga is in the enchantment section of the deck list, which is why I got tripped up there for a moment. But okay, so Dominic finds that, and George kind of with a smile on his face, he's like, "Oh, this sucks."
I mean, anytime that you're playing a deck like this and you don't have a dual land to even represent the counterspell at this point, I imagine is not exactly where George Shabor wants to be.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No Dovin's Vetoes in this main deck, just actual counterspells and spell pierces, like you said. One Force of Negation, which is, I guess, always represented. But does George even have a land?
There's no way. I mean, I guess I would have kept a land, like, if you're on the draw. If you're on the draw, you have 2 lands, and you have the Shark Typhoon. I guess I would have kept that as well, but does actually have a land, so it's just trying to make us believe that there's more stress to be had than there really is.
Okay, Dominic Stryker. We know holding Urza Saga and Seascape Leveler, which doesn't currently have a target. Which is kind of the issue with, I mean, preemptively getting it there, so you just have you know you have in your pocket if you need it later on. That's understandable, but it was unlikely that it could be deployed, would have anything to hit this turn. I suppose there are other options on the table. Dominic could put his Teferi down to 1 and then Seascape Leveler the Teferi to just get a Power Stone. Instead, it's going to be Sundering Titan selected this time. And, well, Sundering Titan's going to take out one of each basic land. Dominic currently with none. And there's a Sanctum, and George is like, okay, that's enough.
Oh, yeah, that's a rough place to be. I mean, I guess the game plan of just going for the haymakers immediately and not trying to play a slower game to match up with George Shabor when you already can tell the little bit of a struggle that the blue-white deck is having. I feel like that's kind of the similar place that both of these decks are in. You're trying to wait to see that moment of weakness and then just kind of go for the strike, as we saw there. Taking a peek at George Shabor's deck here with quite a few pieces of lands of different colors to activate those Leyline Bindings.
Yeah, but importantly, with 4 islands and 2 plains, able to survive under a Blood Moon, which he has a couple of in the board, and we're going to see here. In addition to that, there are 2 Flusterstorms, which sometimes get boarded against Tron because there are Ancient Stargate and Sylvan Scrying to get things assembled early on.
The Blood Moon, Joe.
Yeah, Blood Moon, but Tron players, experienced Tron players, we can go ahead and go over to the other deck list. I mean, yeah, it's something you're used to. Like one of the most.
I don't know if I would expect it ever from an Azorius control deck.
Sure, sure, but you, and we are closed deck lists, so you can't just know that that's coming. But even then, if we go over to the Tron deck list for Dominic Stryker here, I mean, this is something that you can handle. Okay, there's 2 forests, there's a Boseiju, there's Oblivion Stones, so there are answers to Blood Moon, as well as a pair of Haywire Mites in the sideboard. So I wrote off the potential wish targets. There are a couple cards that have more than 1 copy. So clearly there are scenarios where Dominic's planning on sideboarding. I think it's entirely possible this is one of them if he's worried about permanents like Blood Moon. the as well as far as like the overall scope of this Tron deck, we see a copy of main deck Stonebrain. That's maybe
Whoa.
a bit of an outlier. I don't think the last time that you and I worked on Tron, we were doing that. There are a bunch of Warping Wheels main deck, which we liked a lot.
Yes.
Big
fan there.
Not again a card that's going to be great in this matchup, but it's okay. It's a card. It's not a bad thing to have cards that are obvious board outs at certain times.
Yeah. I also am still surprised. I feel like a lot of people who are Tron players that are not us have constantly moved away from playing things like Relica Progenitus main, and that is something that Dominic Stryker is still choosing to play here and does have access to. Sideboard, I think, is interesting, but I'm excited to see how it's going to shake up and if those Blood Moons are going to end up being impactful and maybe take Dominic Stryker by surprise to give George Chabot a game number 2.
We'll see. We'll see. All right, let's go ahead and get him 2 going. Also notable, Dominic Stryker has only played 3 card liberated, not going with the full 4. Maybe he had to find room to fit in the Stonebrain, some of these other cards, for example. Anyway, we'll see. All right, so underway here, we have a Chromatic, we have a Spell Pierce again, which George Jabor is playing, as we said, in triplicate, which is going to be very strong here in the early going.
Followed up with a Mystic Gate. Maybe not exactly the start that you'd like to see for George if you are planning to go into the Blood Moon game plan. So potentially not going to be the call here. As land number 2, that is a different Tron piece. Try to draw ourselves some more cards, make some green mana, and see what we can do to try and get ourselves closer to Tron. But it's not going to be turn 3, 7 mana for Dominic Stryker here.
Well, you say that, but last game the Sylvan Scry got countered, and then he just had it anyway. So here's an island for George, and there's a Blood Moon. Okay, maybe that's what you're referring to, but you're absolutely right. Dominic is not going to have 7 mana this turn.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that we were going to have 7 mana. We weren't going to have access to all 7 mana. Dominic Stryker doing a nice little thank you to whatever powers that be for this forest.
Yeah, I mean, the expedition map is there that could have fetched the forest if he needed to, but it's certainly nice to just have it so the map can get the mine later on when Dominic has use for it. So let's see. The ideal play here would be a Haywire Might. He does have 2. He may have boarded in, well, any number really.
Wouldn't you just slam it if you have the Haywire Might?
Yes.
Come on, Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, he knows that's the force of negation, so presumably he doesn't have that. And it's Sylvan Scrying, maybe looking up for Boseiju, which is not something George Jabor will be able to answer.
That is the game plan. How do you feel about, I guess, it feels interesting to me to use the Sylvan Scrying and not just use the expedition map that we have in play on end step.
So I like it. George Jabor's tapped out, so Sylvan Scrying is going to resolve basically, whereas maps always going to resolve when you want to spend mana on it. So I'm fine with Dominic doing that.
All right, no white mana unless George is going to be able to play Plains this turn, but instead it is an island and follow it into Narset, Parter of Fail's immediate down tick to see what we can find. And it's just a Spell Pierce with a mountain in play.
Yeah, so that's an uncastable Spell Pierce at the moment. And okay.
Honestly, at this point, I guess it depends on what's in my hand, but I maybe don't destroy this Blood Moon.
That's actually reasonable thought. The mine is pulled up here and finds its way into play. So Dominic can just end step Boseiju the Blood Moon if he wants to, but you're right. I mean, George working on 2 islands and nothing else. And all right, we'll see. Narset activates again. George has options, obviously, since he's going to take a moment to figure out what he wants to choose here. And I'll take that moment to express a little sadness. George Jabor used to play Revised Islands and Plains because he, in years past, watched me play Miracles over and over again on the Star City Circuit and Grand Prix, and was like, I'm going to play the same lands as he is.
Aww.
And he is no longer playing them. So I've been cast aside.
George hates you now.
George Jabor's fandom is over. And
you got to start playing again, Joe.
I'm a little disappointed by that, I got to say.
That's fair. I
Uh,
mean, how do you feel about the galaxy lands as we do see the Boseiju? As we figured, Tron assembled and now unlocked, and not as concerned about destroying this blood moon now that George quickly was able to find a plains, and I don't feel like I'm giving it up.
oh,
Oh, the Days Undoing at the top of the deck.
yeah, that would have been something else.
I
Instead of
must.
shuffle
I
deck
like
and
that George was like, haha, laughing, and is actually going to show the opponent that.
Well, George Jabor probably has enough experience to realize that this is not looking especially good for him right now. So, Tron player with 8 mana and a land drop coming.
Oh, well, that's
wow.
smooth. Maybe not
That
what
was
we didn't. I mean, there's no elementals to pitch cast Giganta 2 in this matchup, but we will just immediately have our turn Leyline binded.
yeah. I gotta say,
bound?
I mean, I'm still on the. I mean, if you pick up Giganta and cast it as a creature, that does not bode well for your chances of winning.
Yeah, I'm
historically.
also. We didn't play a land, so what is in Dominic Striker's hand? Are we just waiting to see what was going to be deployed? Like, I'm very curious here.
I mean, it could be. I mean, Oblivion Stone would be pretty juicy right now. Maybe he's
We have
sitting
all
on
of
some
our
interactive
Ulamog's in
stuff here.
hand.
Blast Zone on 3 would be okay.
Good.
He could also be sitting on some chromatics, and he's just there's. No, I take it back. That wouldn't make any sense. He could just play them and use them on George's turn. But here's a Karn, liberated. George Jabor, do you have an answer for that? We know you have a Spell Pierce. That also could explain why Dominic did not do much last turn.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, get rid of that
Dominic will get back his Giganta.
Give me this elk back. Also, I want this Leyline Binding for the next game that we're starting.
And then someone's crying, and there's the Spell Pierce. All right, George Jabor will fetch. And, well, even if the other Blood Moon comes off the top here, there is a Karn liberated already on the board. So, what are we even looking for here?
Another Leyline Binding?
I think you're right, actually. I think another Leyline Binding.
Instead, it is Kahira to come down.
Okay.
I imagine this Kahira is going to be fodder to protect our planeswalkers. And George hoping to summon the Days Undoing back to the top of the deck.
Yeah, really. So one companion is going to chump block the other companion. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, so they're continuing to maybe not be the most impressive things. Giganta is a 5/5 at least. All right, a whole lot of mana, a whole lot of choices to make for Dominic. I mean, with this Kahira down, last zone for 3, continuing to look pretty spicy. Give me one of the cards in your hand, says Dominic.
Okay, George is not phased by that. A couple cards left in hand, and you're right. Looking for that Days Undoing, which will replenish everything. Giganta comes in. Maybe we're going to see a Solitude here. As George is fetching. That will leave him tapped down. Not necessarily shields down, as there is a Force of Negation in the deck. But just one.
Just one. Wow.
It's actually a Prismatic Ending for 5.
Ooh. We gotta get ourselves a Scion of Draco.
Yeah, really.
Tron would be very bad at casting a Scion. Well, actually, we'd maybe be casting it for like 10.
Yeah, no problem. It's in there.
It definitely is less potent than something like an Ulamog,
probably, but you know.
But it doesn't get prismatically ended.
Yeah, and you don't get cool points either. You get cool points if you're casting Scion of Draco and Tron.
Yeah, I'm only interested in cool points.
Karn, Great Creator. All right. We'll see what this finds here. Liquid Metal Coating, not so effective when your opponent has 8 lands in play. Thunder Titan, however.
You could use the Liquid Metal Coating to stop this Teferi from being activated.
True.
I imagine that we're trying to find something cheap to also be able to put 2 more counters on this blast zone on end of turn, or we're just going to the wall.
Okay, Stone Brain it is. Stone Brain activates. I suppose choices could be Leyline Binding or. I mean, you're not going to name the Singleton Days Undoing, right? You could name Blood Moon. It is
Blood
Blood Moon.
Moon.
Okay, yeah. Dominic
Okay.
Striker has no way of knowing that there's 2 Blood Moons in Georgia's deck. He saw 1. There could be 4. There could be, he doesn't know. And that's probably the most threatening card. So that makes sense.
Sure.
Well worth 2 loyalty off of your Karn.
Yeah, this is a little bit unfortunate. I guess we haven't activated our Karn Liberated this turn, but it does feel like we're potentially priced into minusing our Karn Liberated on something like the Kihira, which is not like.
He did. It took the card out of hand. It took the land out of hand already.
Oh, okay. That just happened so early. Yeah, it just feels really unfortunate that we just spent that much mana to get rid of Blood Moon with our Karn Liberated that just dies to the Kihira in play.
That's fair. You're right about that. That you get picked off by the Kihira. George does convert the Teferi Time Reveler into a free card, allowing Dominic to interact on George's turn. Not that that matters. And yeah, okay, you call Leyline Binding number 2. Pretty big deal there.
All right, we better hope that Dominic is holding some good cards in hand.
I mean, I don't feel like I would say by any stretch of the imagination that Dominic is ahead here. There's no.
Yeah, no,
Chromatic Sphere, yeah. George on top of it, Dominic size. Like, you're right, I forgot. So Chromatic will not cycle. And there is another great creator into a Ballista, and George doesn't seem to have much interaction, otherwise we probably would have seen it. Now Darcy gets picked off.
Ouch. Yeah, and a rough place to be once again. We're having to use that Ballista to just keep this Karn safe. So what's the next grab of this Karn gonna be?
I mean, Sundering Titan sounds good to me. If I
Yeah,
saw
that's kinda
Prismatic
what I
Ending
was
for
thinking
5,
too.
yeah, there you go. So Dominic's going to tutor up.
Ulamog.
Ulamog sounds, wow, yeah, it's Ulamog with very big writing. And George is going to lose 5 land, I think.
Yeah, that's a pretty big hit. I'm kind of surprised that I guess it's only like 2 cards in George's hand, but I'm still surprised that one of them isn't a counter of any kind, considering that we did basically nothing on the last turn.
Yeah, fair. Okay, the Sundering Titan is now pretty impossible to deal with. I mean, it's not even a die trigger; it's a leaves play trigger. So even a Leyline Binding will wipe out 2 more lands for George. And Leyline Binding no longer is cheap, by the way.
Yeah, it would cost us quite a bit. So a rough place to be for George. Misty Rainforest going to see if we can fix that, but I imagine that George's deck is just playing like one of a lot of those different colors.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we're happy that there's 2 to 3 Leyline Bindings out of our deck and we're not drawing some dead cards.
I guess. I mean, at this point, facing down the Sundering Titan and Ulamog in hand, I think George's deck might be dead cards right now. Maybe Dress Down followed by a removal spell would allow him to get the Sundering Titan out of there without costing himself more lands.
Oh, in response, do we have a Veil of Summer? No, we have 2 mana for a Warping Whale.
Okay. So making a Zion token there.
And the Dress Down is stopping the Sundering Titan from having its leaves the battlefield trigger. Which, I mean, notably this time is saving Dominic Striker's Forest.
Good point. All right, here comes across. I think here has Vigilance, but who cares at this point? What? Oh, I'm sorry, it does not. The Dress Down took away the Vigilance. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And lets the Karn die, uses that Eldrazi Scion to enable this Ulamog. Let's get rid of that Leyline Binding. I don't even know what the other target was. I guess it's Kihira, but we're mostly just excited to get this Karn Liberated back in play.
Yeah, Karn Liberated, always a good time. Dominic Striker, how are you only playing 3? What is the deal? Takes down the Mystic Gate. Georgia Board down to 4 land.
We had to cut a card liberated to play Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Okay, that's fair. Ugin's pretty cool too. George Demore still in good spirits. A jolly fellow if there ever was one, while getting absolutely train wrecked by the Tron deck here.
It does feel like George's draws have been not exactly what you would.
No, you're
Like?
right. He hasn't found a counterspell, I feel like, in the match.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Normally,
Yeah.
this is not how I expect this matchup to go. The only thing that we've really seen is a Spell Pierce, and the Spell Pierce was known about, so Dominic just got to play around it.
Mm-hmm. There's another Spell Pierce. And Dominic at this point is just thinking, okay, what's the best way in this? Ulamog swings over.
Let's exile 20 cards out of your library, please.
George DeBoer's actually going to go through the motions here. Instead of just packing it. He's also only at 11 life.
Hey, that's 2 hits from Ulamog.
I suppose.
And there's Ugin,
And
the
there's an
Spirit
Ugin.
Dragon. But hey, there's the
Hey,
counterspell that we've been saying needed to happen.
Well, that was about 10 turns late and may not
Yeah.
have mattered at the time anyway. But George will live another turn here. Dominic Striker will have to wait one more moment to advance to 5-1-1.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen a Azorius control deck spend so long hellbent.
Yeah, sure. That's true.
It feels
It's not the way they're supposed to
odd.
operate. Yeah, there's been no card drawing aside from well, I guess there was a Narset that eventually picked up 2 cards. Been a couple to fairies, but yeah, you're right about that.
And having to use your Teferi minus to put Ulamog back in your opponent's hand, I don't think there's something that could possibly feel worse.
Well, how about getting plinked to death by the Warping Whale token that Dominic just found?
Sure, that might feel worse.
All right, Ulamog's going to come out, so Warping Whale will have to wait. And 2 islands in the fetch land that George can't use.
Yeah, that's a very. I mean, I've been saying it kind of this whole match. It feels like George has just been wrong draws, rough places. Guy who reached Sanitarium. If there's a deck where you don't want your opponent to do drawing, it's probably the Tron deck, especially in this situation. And that is going to be it, as Dominic Striker with Mono Green Tron takes it home, and some unfortunate draws to come from George Jabor.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, a matchup that probably favors Dominic in the first place, but George's deck really didn't come to play that time. So Dominic will advance to 5-1-1. Is going to need to win in the last round, and then we'll see how the tiebreakers play out if he does get that win. We'll be back for round 8 momentarily. We'll find some win and ins for you, and we'll see how this tournament gets shaped up. We have the elimination rounds to come, but first, one more round to see who gets contest in the top 8. We'll be right back.